Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for our final showcase presentation. This is the Nebraska Environmental Trust Senior Design Team talking about our work on the grant management system. So the company that we worked with, our sponsor, was the Nebraska Environmental Trust. This is a state program dedicated to the preservation of Nebraska's natural resources. And it provides a lot of seed money needed to preserve critical habitat areas, protect water supplies, and establish recycling programs. More than $19 million is distributed in grant funding to Nebraska projects each year. And this is actually the system that we were working on, the system by which project officers apply for this grant seed money, and administrators are able to review applications and award this money for different projects. So let me start by talking a little bit about the stakeholders in this project. Obviously, the Nebraska Environmental Trust staff themselves are the main stakeholders in this project, as they are the ones sponsoring this project, but a number of other sponsors were involved. Obviously, the other side of that coin is the project officers using the system are going to be a stakeholder in this project. Even though they don't have direct input, they're going to benefit from the work that we do. We also worked with Gregoire Consulting, which is a group that was hired by Nebraska Environmental Trust in order to oversee the development of this project. We also worked a bit with Don't Panic Labs, who oversee some of the technical side, the DevOps of this project, and obviously our own development team, our project manager, our tribe lead, and the student developers are all stakeholders in the development of this project. Now I'll hand it over to Maggie to introduce our team and talk a little bit more about the work we've done.
For our team, I'm the project manager, Ethan's the squad lead and development manager, and Eric, Kushagra, Kyle, and Nathan are all developers. For the problem, Nebraska Environmental Trust previously had an outdated legacy system that was over 15 years old, and this was a problem because it couldn't leverage any new technologies that could keep track of project pieces such as equipment, insurance, land, and taxes, and this also involved a lot of paper. So, for the project, it brought a good opportunity to reduce paper waste and improve the stakeholders' group communication. It also improved the user's usability to track a project.
Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the solution that we implemented to solve the problem that Maggie outlined. We added new features to an existing system. The system has already been under development and has a host of features for tracking grants. We added new features to track equipment records, so purchased equipment associated with specific grant funding, as well as real estate purchased for a certain project under grant funding, and the insurance and tax that goes along with those equipment and real estate purchases. We designed these features with two main user groups in mind, which are the project officers, the users of the system that are making these purchases and using this money, and then the administrators working at the Nebraska Environmental Trust, which are reviewing these purchases, approving them, and making sure that all of the documentation is up to date. And across this whole solution, we had a large focus on quality and functional testing. So making sure that users were really able to use these features as best as possible, and that we were designing them with the end user in mind. So let me give you a little preview of the grant management features that we implemented this year. I'll start off by talking a little bit about the equipment records. So this is the landing page for a project officer that wants to review their various projects. So if we go into one of those projects, we can see various details associated with that project, one of which is a tab that includes equipment records. So this is something we implemented. You're able to add an equipment record on this screen here, and then it appears on a whole listing where a project officer can review all the equipment that they've submitted. Once you've done this, a project officer is able to review all of the data associated with that record. They are able to edit that record if needed, and upload different files associated with that record, maybe like a proof of purchase or something like that. Another function we allow them to do is to print this record. So if they want to print it in order to send it to someone, or they need to print it for their own record keeping, then that's allowed as well. On the flip side, the administrator also needs to be able to perform action for this equipment record. So when a project officer inputs an equipment record, updates all the data, uploads any files, and submits it, then the admin needs to go in and approve it. So we implemented a host of features associated with equipment records for admins as well. So they can review an equipment record, such as this one. It shows all the data that the project officer fills in for that equipment record, and the administrator is also able to add their own data, such as some notes for themselves, maybe, or another admin who might review this file, and they're able to review it in its entirety. So they're able to approve or deny the equipment purchase so that the project officer knows whether or not they can allocate their grant money towards this piece of equipment. We also allow a host of search features. So searching equipment records is something that they're able to do, right? If it's already been submitted or if it's already even been approved, you can search based on the date that it was submitted or the date that it was approved. So that's really handy for administrators. So if we type in a search criterion, they would see results such as this. These are all of the records that are not yet complete and whose end date it falls between the two listed in the parameters there. And we actually even allow administrators to go a step further in that they can export the records that they search for as a CSV file in order to, if they need, print them for their records or import them into another system or send them to another administrator for review. So now to focus a little bit on the insurance side of that equipment record is, you may have seen on a previous screenshot, we actually have a section in every equipment record for adding insurance records. And this can only be done once the record is approved, because if you haven't purchased it, well, then you wouldn't have purchased insurance for it. So once it's approved, they can add an insurance record. They type in the expiration date of the insurance and some notes if the administrator needs to know anything else, and they can hit submit and it goes in there. So you can see that this new insurance record has been entered for this equipment. And then on the administrator side, when you go in to view it, you can see the same insurance record that has been submitted. You can tell all the data that the project officer has submitted, any notes, the expiration date, and you can, again, enter your own notes and data for your own record system and then review that equipment record in order to approve, reject it, or maybe just save it for another administrator to look at. And again, for the administrator, we offer a host of search options as well. So they can search specifically for proof of insurance, not just equipment records. They can search for proof of insurance that's been submitted and needs approval, or even overdue proof of insurance. So that if there's a piece of equipment that's been approved but whose insurance has expired, you can notify project officers, hey, we need to see a new proof of insurance soon if we're going to keep the approval for this equipment going. Our work on the equipment record side is very similar to the same work we did later on real estate records. So we are only going to give you a preview of the equipment record side. A lot of the same logic and interfaces were implemented for real estate, with a few minor changes in logic to accommodate the difference in the approval process between equipment records and real estate records. Now Maggie can talk a little bit about some highlights of our project this year.
So as a team, we ended up completing each feature that was requested for us by the Nebraska Environmental Trust, and we thoroughly tested each new feature we implemented using both unit and system tests. Currently, over 90% of the project is in production, and the project ended up providing a lot of good learning opportunities for us as a team. So the team kind of learned how to come together as a group and foster a fun and effective work environment, which made it easier to work on the project. Additionally, we found out that communication is key with the sponsor, especially when it came with reworking the scope and seeing what they wanted from us and from the project. Additionally, we had to integrate ourselves into an ongoing project with a code base that is currently actually being worked on by other developers at Nebraska Environmental Trust and Don't Panic Labs. Finally, we had to learn how to separate the tasks for each developer because they were so intertwined, and with this, we had to learn different ways to do Git branching strategies that would be effective in doing the project.
Thank you all for joining us for our final showcase presentation and allowing us to show you a little bit of what we've been working on this year. I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor one more time for their work and effort this year. It was a really good learning opportunity, I think, for our entire team. we definitely were able to implement some significant features and learn a lot along the way. So we really appreciate the work that our sponsor did in preparing this project and helping us to complete it and to be successful this year.